The arrival. Earth had changed dramatically since the early space exploration days of the 21st century. By 2157, humanity had united under the Terran Alliance, a collective government born from necessity rather than choice. Climate disasters, resource wars, and the realization that our species needed to expand beyond our home planet had finally pushed nations to set aside their differences. The first colony on Mars had celebrated its 75th anniversary. Mining operations thrived in the asteroid belt. Research outposts dotted the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Humanity had even sent generation ships toward nearby star systems, though none had yet arrived at their destinations. Earth itself had healed considerably. Its population stabilized at 8 billion. Its cities now green marvels of sustainable technology. But in the grand scheme of the galaxy, humans remained infants, barely able to crawl beyond their solar cradle. That reality became painfully apparent when they arrived. Commander Eliza Chen was conducting a routine inspection of Orbital Defense Station Epsilon when every system simultaneously triggered emergency protocols. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded, steadying herself against a console as the station's artificial gravity briefly fluctuated. Lieutenant Patel's fingers flew across holographic displays. "Unknown vessels, Commander. Hundreds of them. They just appeared at the edge of the system." "That's impossible," Chen replied, but the evidence filled the monitors around her. Massive ships, unlike anything human engineers had ever designed, had somehow bypassed all early warning systems. "They're transmitting," Patel said, his voice trembling slightly. "System-wide broadcast. All channels." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the humanoid figure with iridescent blue skin and eyes too large for its narrow face. When it spoke, its words were perfectly translated, another impossible feat that sent chills down Chen's spine. "Attention primitive species of Sol 3. I am High Commander Vexler of the Zeth Imperium. Your system has been selected for immediate integration. Your resources will serve the greater glory of the Imperium. Your genetic material will be cataloged and preserved. Resistance is unnecessary and inadvisable." Chen felt her mouth go dry as the alien continued. "You have achieved rudimentary spaceflight and therefore qualify for the Mercy Protocol. You have precisely one planetary rotation minus 24 of your hours to transmit your surrender. Should you fail to comply, total biosphere sterilization will commence." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. "Get me Earth Command," Chen finally managed. Now, in Geneva, the Terran Alliance Council convened an emergency session. Military leaders, scientists, and government officials from around the world gathered physically or via secure hologram to assess the threat. "They've blockaded the entire system," General Williams reported grimly. "Every exit point, even the deep space probes we sent toward Alpha Centauri, have been neutralized." "What about our defense capabilities?" asked Counselor Rodriguez. Admiral Zhao shook his head. "Based on initial scans, their technology exceeds ours by centuries. Our most advanced weaponry would be like throwing stones at a nuclear submarine." "Then we negotiate," suggested Counselor Nkosi. "With what leverage?" Williams countered. "They've made it clear, surrender or extinction." As arguments erupted across the chamber, Dr. Marcus Reed sat quietly at the far end of the table. At 42, Reed was the youngest director ever appointed to head the Quantum Physics Division at the Global Science Institute. His disheveled appearance and perpetual stubble belied one of the most brilliant minds of his generation. "Dr. Reed," Council President Alvarez said, noticing his silence, "your insights would be valuable at this moment." Reed looked up, seemingly startled to be addressed. "Sorry, I was calculating probabilities." "And?" Alvarez prompted. "Conventional resistance. 0 chance of success. Negotiation. Approximately 2% chance they might preserve some small population as specimens. Surrender likely results in the efficient harvesting of Earth's resources and controlled human extinction within 50 years. The room fell silent. However, Reed continued, there might be one alternative with a non-zero probability of success. All eyes turned to him. Project Prometheus. Admiral Zhao scoffed. Your theoretical quantum weapon. The one that's never been tested. It's not a weapon, Reed corrected. At least that wasn't its intended purpose. It's a quantum entanglement array designed to synchronize particle states across vast distances. In theory, it could create a field FAT. In English, Dr. Williams interrupted. Reed sighed. It could potentially disrupt advanced technology by altering fundamental physical constants within a localized field. And this would stop their ships how exactly? Rodriguez asked. Their propulsion, weapons, life support, all would rely on stable quantum states. If we can modify those states, their technology might simply stop working. Might, Alvarez pressed. The probability is difficult to calculate without knowing the specifics of their technology. But given the alternatives, the council members exchanged glances. How long would it take to prepare this array? Alvarez finally asked. The prototype exists at our lunar facility. It would need modifications, power boosting. With everyone working around the clock, 22 hours. That's cutting it close to their deadline, Williams noted. It's the only option we have, Alvarez decided. Dr. Reed, you have full authority. Whatever resources you need. Reed nodded, the weight of humanity's survival suddenly resting on his shoulders. 16 hours later, Commander Chen found herself aboard a military shuttle bound for the Lunar Research Facility. Earth below was unnervingly peaceful. Most civilians remained unaware of the existential threat hovering at the edges of their solar system, the Terran Alliance having decided that global panic would only hinder their desperate efforts. Commander, we're approaching Lunar Base Artemis, the pilot announced. Chen nodded, her gaze fixed on the tablet displaying the latest intel. The Zeth vessels had maintained their positions, a perfect blockade encompassing the solar system. Occasional bursts of energy suggested they were neutralizing any human probes or satellites that ventured too close. The shuttle docked smoothly at the facility built into the rim of Shackleton Crater. Chen was immediately escorted to the central laboratory where Dr. Reed and his team worked frantically. The quantum entanglement array dominated the center of the room, a spherical structure approximately 5 meters in diameter, composed of interlocking rings that occasionally shifted position with barely audible humming sounds. Cables snaked from it to various power sources and monitoring stations. Dr. Reed, Chen called out. Reed glanced up from a console, dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he hadn't slept since the crisis began. Commander Chen, you're our military liaison, I take it. I'm here to understand exactly what we're betting humanity's survival on, she replied. Reed gestured her closer to a holographic display. This is what we know about the Zeth fleet. The display showed hundreds of ships in formation. And this, he continued, manipulating the image to zoom in on one vessel, is what our limited scans tell us about their technology. Chen studied the technical readouts. I'm not a physicist, Doctor. Their ships utilize what appears to be a form of quantum field manipulation for everything. Propulsion, weapons, shields. They're centuries beyond us, but they still obey the laws of physics. And your array can affect those laws. Reed gave a tired smile. Not exactly. The laws remain constant, but how particles interact within those laws can be influenced. Think of it like changing the rules of a game while it's being played. And you're certain this will work? Chen pressed. Reed's smile faded. Nothing is certain. But laboratory tests suggest a 62% probability of significant disruption to any quantum-based technology within the field radius. And the other 38%, either nothing happens, or, Reed hesitated. Or what? Or we trigger a cascading quantum failure that collapses the fabric of space-time within our solar system. Chen stared at him. You're telling me this could destroy Earth? Theoretically. But the math suggests that's a very remote possibility, less than 0.1%. Those aren't odds I'd normally take, Chen said grimly. compared to the 100% chance of extinction the Zeth are offering. I'll take those odds any day, Reed countered. Chen couldn't argue with that logic. How much longer? Reed checked his watch. 6 hours to complete the modifications and charge the array. The Zeth deadline expires in 8. Where will you deploy it? That's where it gets complicated, Reed admitted. The effective radius is limited. We need to position the array at the optimal point to affect as much of their fleet as possible. And that would be Lagrange point L1, between Earth and the Sun. But getting it there in time. Leave that to me, Chen said, already formulating a plan. Just make sure the thing works, Doctor. As she turned to leave, Reed called after her. Commander, if this works, it won't be like firing a weapon. The effects will be instantaneous throughout the field. One moment their ships will be functioning, the next. Chen nodded. The shortest war in history. If we survive to record it, Reed added softly. The Quantum Gambit. 4 hours later, the modified quantum entanglement array was carefully loaded aboard the Terran Alliance's most advanced stealth vessel, the TAS Nightshade. Originally designed for covert surveillance missions, the Nightshade had been retrofitted with enhanced propulsion systems for this critical mission. Commander Chen stood on the bridge, reviewing final preparations with her small, hand-picked crew. Each was a specialist in their field, and each understood that failure meant extinction for their species. Navigation, plot the most direct course to L1, Chen ordered. Maintain stealth protocols until we reach deployment coordinates. Yes, Commander, replied Lieutenant Santos. Estimated transit time, 47 minutes. Dr. Reed entered the bridge, accompanied by 2 of his team members. We've secured the array in the cargo bay and connected it to the ship's power systems for final charging. Will it be ready in time? Chen asked. Reed nodded. Barely. Full charge should complete approximately 12 minutes before the Zeth deadline expires. Chen activated the main view screen, displaying the positions of the Zeth vessels. They remained in their blockade formation, but several had begun moving into what military analysts identified as attack positions. They're not waiting for their own deadline, Chen observed grimly. They never intended to, Reed replied. The ultimatum was psychological warfare. They wanted us to spend our final hours in fear, perhaps fighting among ourselves. Well, they miscalculated, Chen said. Helm, initiate departure sequence. Full stealth mode. The Nightshade detached from the lunar base, its advanced propulsion system leaving no visible exhaust trail as it accelerated away from Earth's satellite. For 30 tense minutes, they traveled in near silence, each crew member focused on their tasks. The Zeth vessels grew larger on their sensors as they approached. Proximity alert, Santos announced suddenly. Zeth patrol craft at bearing 045. Range 30,000 kilometers in closing. Have they detected us? Chen demanded. Uncertain. Their course suggests routine patrol, but they'll pass within 5,000 kilometers of our position in approximately 3 minutes. Chen turned to Reed. If they scan us. Our stealth technology is based on conventional physics, Reed replied. Their quantum sensors will likely detect us instantly. Chen made her decision. Adjust course bearing 200. We'll swing wide around their patrol route. That adds 11 minutes to our transit time, Santos warned. Better than being intercepted before we reach the deployment point, Chen countered. The Nightshade veered away from the approaching patrol, adding precious minutes to their journey. On the view screen, they watched as multiple Zeth vessels began forming into attack clusters. They're preparing for their assault, Chen observed. How much longer to deployment coordinates? 22 minutes, Santos replied. Reed checked his tablet. Array charge at 86%. We're cutting it close, Commander. The Nightshade continued its careful approach, evading 3 more Zeth patrols. With each course correction, their arrival time slipped closer to the deadline. Commander, Communications Officer Park called out. They're broadcasting again. System-wide. The view screen switched to show High Commander Vexler. His expression, though alien, conveyed what could only be described as smug satisfaction. Primitives of Sol 3. Your allotted time expires in 30 of your minutes. We have detected your pitiful attempts at evacuation and resistance. Your species' stubborn nature has been noted in the Imperium's biological archives. The alien's massive eyes blinked slowly. As a demonstration of the Imperium's power, we will now eliminate your outermost dwarf planet. Observe your inevitable fate. The transmission cut to a view of Pluto, peacefully orbiting in the distant reaches of the solar system. Suddenly, a beam of intense energy struck the dwarf planet. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Pluto began to glow, its surface brightening until it shattered completely, fragments spinning away into the void. Silence fell over the Nightshade's bridge. They just destroyed Pluto, Park whispered, like it was nothing. Deployment coordinates in 8 minutes, Santos reported, her voice shaking slightly. Chen turned to Reed. Will your array stop that kind of weapon? Reed's face had gone pale. If it works as designed, yes. Their weapons utilize the same quantum principles as their other systems. And if it doesn't? Reed met her gaze steadily. Then we'll have front-row seats to Earth's destruction. Chen nodded grimly. Then we make sure it works. All stations, prepare for deployment. Dr. Reed, begin final preparations. Reed hurried from the bridge toward the cargo bay, where his team monitored the array's charging process. The Nightshade finally reached the L1 Lagrange point, the gravitational balance point between Earth and the Sun, with just 15 minutes remaining before the Zeth deadline. Deploying array in 3, 2, 1, Santos announced. The cargo bay doors opened, and the spherical quantum entanglement array was carefully maneuvered into space. Tethered to the Nightshade by power cables and data links, the device began its final activation sequence. Reed returned to the bridge. Array deployment successful. Final charge at 94%. We'll be ready to activate in approximately 8 minutes. On the view screen, they could see the Zeth fleet repositioning. Several of their largest vessels were now aligned directly with Earth. They're not waiting for their deadline, Chen observed. No. Reed agreed. Energy readings suggest they're charging weapons. How much longer? 5 minutes to full charge. Chen made a rapid decision. We can't wait. Initiate the array at current charge levels. Reed hesitated. The success probability dropped significantly below 90% charge. And if those ships fire, our probability drops to 0, Chen countered. Do it now, Doctor. After a moment's hesitation, Reed nodded and opened a secure channel to his team in the cargo bay. Initiate quantum field generation at current charge. Authorization read Alpha 70. Acknowledged, came the response. Initiating in 3, 2, 1. From the seemingly innocuous spherical device, an invisible wave of altered quantum states expanded outward at the speed of light. There was no visible evidence of its activation, no energy beam, no dramatic explosion. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Did it work? Chen asked. Reed stared at his readings. Field expanding at expected rate, reaching the nearest Zeth vessels now. Suddenly, the Zeth ships closest to their position began behaving erratically. Their lights flickered. Several smaller vessels spun out of formation. The larger ships seemed to drift, their previously precise movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. It's working, Santos exclaimed. As the quantum field continued expanding, the effect spread throughout the Zeth fleet. Ship after ship lost power, weapon systems deactivated, and propulsion failed. Within 60 seconds, the entire blockade, hundreds of the most advanced vessels in the galaxy, hung powerless in space. My God, Chen whispered. We did it. Reed stared at his readings in astonishment. The effect is more comprehensive than I predicted. It seems their technology was even more quantum dependent than we realized. Can they reverse it? Chen asked. Reed shook his head. The field has fundamentally altered the quantum states their technology relies on. They would need to completely rebuild their systems from the ground up, using different scientific principles. So the most advanced civilization we've encountered, Chen began, just became technological primitives within our solar system. Reed finished. Their moment of triumph was interrupted by an incoming transmission. To everyone's surprise, it came from the Zeth command vessel. Though the signal was weak and distorted, High Commander Vexler appeared on screen, his ship's interior dark, except for what appeared to be emergency lighting. His previously arrogant demeanor had vanished, replaced by confusion and the first hints of fear. What have you done?" he demanded. "This is impossible. Your species does not possess this level of technology." Chen stepped forward. "This is Commander Eliza Chen of the Terran Alliance. Your fleet has been neutralized. Your advantage is gone." "This cannot be," Vexler insisted. "We studied your civilization thoroughly. You are primitives, barely able to reach your own moon. Perhaps you should have studied more carefully," Chen replied calmly. "Now let's discuss terms for your surrender." The alien's large eyes blinked rapidly in what might have been shock. "Surrender. The Zeth Imperium does not surrender. Your ships are powerless, your weapons disabled. Your life support systems are operating on emergency reserves that will fail within hours," Chen stated. "Surrender is your only option for survival." For several long moments, Vexler stared silently. Finally, his shoulders slumped in what appeared to be a universal gesture of defeat. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. 3 days later, Commander Chen and Dr. Reed stood in the Geneva Council chamber, receiving the highest honors the Terran Alliance could bestow. The Zeth fleet remained in orbit, powerless and under human supervision, as their crews were gradually evacuated to temporary habitation domes on Mars. "You've not only saved humanity, but you've completely rewritten our place in the galactic community," President Alvarez declared during the ceremony. Later, in a quieter moment away from the celebrations, Reed explained to Chen what they had learned from the Zeth. Their entire civilization was built on manipulating quantum states, a different approach than our development through mechanical and then electronic technology. They're physically incapable of conceptualizing the alternative paths we took in our technological evolution. "So our primitive status was actually our advantage," Chen observed. Reed nodded. "Exactly. They never imagined we could develop a way to interfere with their quantum technology, precisely because we hadn't mastered it ourselves. It would be like a civilization with advanced electronics being defeated by one that had developed sophisticated biological technologies instead. What happens to them now?" "We're learning from each other," Reed replied. "They're teaching us about the wider galaxy. Apparently, there are dozens of spacefaring civilizations out there. And we're helping them develop alternative technologies that work within the quantum disruption field." Chen smiled slightly. "The shortest war in history led to the fastest peace. And humanity's introduction to the galactic community," Reed added. "Though I suspect our reputation may precede us now." "Good," Chen said firmly. "Let them know that Earth isn't to be trifled with." As night fell over Geneva, lights from the powerless Zeth ships could be seen in the sky, a constant reminder of how quickly the balance of power could shift in a universe where different paths of knowledge led to different kinds of strength, and how humanity's greatest asset had always been its adaptability in the face of impossible odds. In the end, the humans hadn't just won a war in seconds. They had earned their place among the stars by thinking differently than anyone else in the galaxy.